Welcome to Phillipsburg Manor. I'm Leah.
And I'm Nick, and this is our channel, Sleepy Hollow and Beyond.
Today we want to encourage you to come out to Phillipsburg Manor in Sleepy Hollow by showing you just some of what you can expect to see and learn on the tour that the amazing people at Historic Hudson Valley have put together.
So if that's something you think you're interested in, come across the Mill Pond Bridge with us.
Frederick Phillips immigrated to America somewhere around 1660. He married a wealthy widow in 1662 and began amassing a fortune through international trade and real estate. He became the wealthiest man in the colony by the time the British took over the Dutch colonies in 1664. It was during this time that Phillips pledged his loyalty to the crown and was rewarded with a title and manorship over the land that Phillipsburg Manor sits on today.
Unfortunately, one of the avenues of trade that Phillips was involved in was the international slave trade. In fact, it's very likely that Phillips was responsible for bringing over the very first Africans to step foot in the region of what is now Westchester County, New York, in 1685 on his ship, the Charles. The Charles left Madagascar with 146 men, women, and children from the Bakongo region of Africa. After the 12-week journey across the Atlantic, there were 105 captives still alive. They stopped in Barbados, where 82 captives were purchased to work on sugarcane plantations. The remaining 23 sailed up to New York. 14 more captives died on the way. By the time the ship docked in Rye, New York, there were 9 left. One boy was sent down to Manhattan, and the remaining 8 were picked up by Frederick's son, Adolph Phillips. They were then marched across Westchester to Phillipsburg Manor, where they were immediately set to work on building the barn, manor house, mill, and the old Dutch church, some of which still stand today. These 8 unnamed Bakongo Africans were the first in what would become over 125 Africans enslaved by the Phillips family at their Sleepy Hollow, Yonkers, and Manhattan properties.
After the death of Frederick Phillips, his son Adolph inherited the gristmill operation at Phillipsburg Manor. Adolph didn't have any children, so when he died in 1750, a probate inventory of the property was taken by the bank to determine how to divvy up his assets. It's only because of this that we know the names of the 23 enslaved Africans who lived and worked at the upper mill at Phillipsburg Manor during this time. You can see their names here on an enlarged version of the document listed just above the cattle. We can't talk about the upper mill without talking about a man named Caesar. You can see here that Caesar's name is at the top of the list of men, and that's no accident. He was the master miller here in the mill house, where a large grist mill operation was turning out 30,000 pounds of corn, wheat, and rye flour per week. The mill house still houses a fully operational grist mill, which gets its hydropower from the Pocantico River. And if you take a tour, you'll get a full demonstration of how the grist mill works. It was a highly scientific operation that Caesar would have begun studying for around 10 years old. As well as being responsible for repairing the wooden and metal parts of the machine when they broke down, Caesar had to know a great deal of math, engineering, and agriculture to pull off this scale of production on a weekly basis. On top of this, he coordinated and delegated all of the tasks of his apprentices and helpers to make sure operations ran smoothly and production was timely. This made Caesar more educated and skilled than most of the white tenant farmers in the region at the time.
So basically what you're saying is Caesar ran his own very successful business, and had he been compensated fairly for his work, he would have been a very wealthy man.
Yeah, exactly. I think that Caesar really takes this sort of misinformed narrative as an enslaved person being just an unskilled laborer who kind of did these mindless physical tasks and nothing more. And Caesar shows us that, in fact, they were capable of running full-scale business operations. He single-handedly earned the Phillips family an immense fortune with zero profit for himself. Now, the building that you'll see today is not the building that Caesar worked in 1750, but it is a replica that was built on the foundation of the original mill house in 1969.
As integral as Caesar was in the mill house, it seems that a woman named Susan may have been just as important to the manor house. You can see that her name is also at the top of the list of women, possibly because she was the oldest, or because she was the most knowledgeable in the Phillips family commercial butter production operation. This operation took place on the lower floor of the manor house. Along with Abigail, Massey, Dina, and Sue, the enslaved women of the property were responsible for milking a dozen cows, separating cream and churning it for hours at a time into butter, and then packing it into barrels to be shipped to New York City and the Caribbean. On top of this, they were also responsible for growing and preparing the food for the entire enslaved community. You can see here some toys and a cot kept in the lower kitchen because at the same time that all of this was going on, the small children would have to be minded as well.
The second kitchen in the upper portion of the house is much more spacious and light, with a much larger hearth and cooking area. This kitchen was also worked by the enslaved women of the manor, but only to prepare meals for Adolph Phillips and whoever he brought with him when he stayed at the manor house a few times a year to check on business. It makes you wonder when these women would have had time to breathe in between preparing meals for the 23 enslaved, as well as producing enough butter for a commercial operation, taking care of small children, and attending to the meals and needs of Phillips and whoever he brought with him when he came to the manor house.
To that point, we were told by one of the tour guides that on Sundays they should have had a day of rest, but instead, the enslaved community was expected to load all of the goods that they had spent all week producing into carts to be sent off to the ships. So the work truly never ended. The rest of the tour of the manor house consisted of seeing Adolph's bedroom, a spare bedroom, a parlor, and multiple storage rooms that would have been used for the Phillips family businesses. The manor house was used primarily for business and was never actually a full-time residence. It was only used as a residence a few times a year when Phillips would come check on things. However, the enslaved community did live and work here full-time. The museum is not sure where their quarters were, but there is speculation that they were on the other side of the mill pond near where Broadway is today.
Outside the manor house is the kitchen garden that's fully accessible to visitors, where the enslaved women and men would have grown their vegetables, fruits, and herbs during the warmer months.
The last structure that you'll see if you take the Phillipsburg Manor tour is the barn. Now, this is an authentic 1750s Dutch barn that was dismantled in upstate New York and reassembled authentically. That means no power tools were involved, only the primitive hand tools that the settlers would have had in the 18th century. Unfortunately, the original barn burned down.
The barn in 1750 was used for storing wheat, and the large doors on the east and west side of the barn created optimal conditions for drying out the wheat after harvesting when they were open at the same time. This is where men like Caesar, Tom, and Samson spent hours extracting the wheat kernel from the wheat stalk, which is the part that is ground into flour at the mill. This was done in a process called threshing the wheat with the tool called a flail.
I just have to say, I think the fact that Historic Hudson Valley took the time and effort to have another period barn dismantled and reassembled here using only authentic 18th century tools really shows their commitment to the vision of taking visitors back in time when they cross the Mill Pond Bridge and enter the world of Phillipsburg Manor. It's impressive, but it's not surprising. Historic Hudson Valley has proved their commitment to this vision in the past.
Had you taken this tour before the early 2000s,
you would have learned about the Phillips family immigrating to America and rising to prominence. You would have learned about
Frederick and his sons.
You would have learned about Adolph's nephew, Frederick II, and eventually you would have learned about his son, Frederick III, who was a British loyalist and swore his allegiance to the king during the American Revolution. And after the Revolutionary War, all 52,000 acres of land that were owned by the Phillips family were taken by the now state of New York. The tour would focus primarily on the Phillips family, but sometime in the late 90s, things started to shift. A spattering of museums like Thomas Jefferson's Monticello started to include mentions of slavery on some of their tours. Historic Hudson Valley took it a very large step further and completely redesigned their tour. It must have taken quite the look inward to come to terms with the fact that they were telling the story all wrong. In 2002, they started presenting their tour primarily focused on the enslaved Africans that made Phillipsburg Manor what it was. They were among the first American museums to do this.
As well as coming out to Phillipsburg Manor, we urge you to check out Historic Hudson Valley's People Not Property virtual exhibit on their website, which we'll link below. This interactive documentary goes even more in depth on what it meant to be enslaved in the North. It's an invaluable tool for students, teachers, and anyone interested in the history of the Hudson Valley. You'll also have a chance to visit the Activity Center on the tour, where you can try your hand at different 18th century tasks that made up daily life for settlers. On the day we went, our activity was learning about and making herbal medicine.
So that ends our trip to Phillipsburg Manor.
Again, that's just a small peek at what you'll learn and do on this hour and 45-minute tour that truly takes you back in time to 1750.
Please come out and see this beautiful property for yourself. Ask questions. Experience Historic Hudson Valley's commitment to keep the spirits of the enslaved who lived and worked here alive.
If you like this kind of content and want to see more, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel, and we'll see you in the next one.